You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber, and this is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. And today with me is Bobby Charles. He's AMAC's spokesperson. Bobby, I'm thrilled to have you back with us again today and love our show. We talk about truth and history. And today, Bobby, we've got a lot to talk about. So much happening.
True. Very true. And I'm always glad to be here.
That's great. Bobby, we often talk about emerging political issues, national security, international affairs, and constitutional law. I thought today we would lead today with a new topic, and that is the growing role of politics in sports. Bobby, just last night, I was speaking with my husband, and he said to me, you know, Rebecca, I used to love to watch football and baseball to get away from politics. And today, sadly, I think many people feel that there's been an unwelcome intrusion of progressive leftist politics that have been brought into our sports. Now, Bobby, you've written on this, and, we know that with the Olympics occurring right now, I wondered if you could comment on what you are seeing, what you think it really means, and whether or not it will last.
Yeah, these are great questions, Rebecca, and it's perfectly timely with the Olympics occurring around us. I think that society is being sort of force-fed on this idea of progressive politics. They came for our schools, they've come for our commercial environments, and now they're coming for sports. And I think one of the things we just have to remember is that there's a decision point coming around the corner. I mean, looking at the facts is the first best way to look at what is really happening. We Americans love our sports. We're a very sporting culture. By contrast, actually, with a lot of the rest of the world, we're very dedicated to the idea of athletics and good fitness and all that. And in terms of relaxation, we like to watch our high school sports, college sports, and of course, professional sports. And what's happened in the last 5 or 6 years, really accelerating now in the last year, is that there's been sort of an intrusion, an injection of something that we don't generally like to see in our sports. Sports is the place where we can all be on an even ground, at peace, don't worry about politics. And now, it's been so aggressive, this push of leftism into sports, that basketball is becoming a no-watch sport. They're down more than 25%. Football has dropped, I think, just last year, 11%, or the year before, 11%. Baseball it's very sad, that they moved the All-Star game from Atlanta, really decimating the opportunity for a lot of minority businesses, thousands of minority businesses, to make money with the All-Star game in baseball. And the All-Star viewership fell 18%. Which incidentally is endemic. What's happening in baseball, and they've done studies here about why people are not watching sports, and it all comes back to this politics business. But baseball has seen a 15% drop in 5 years. They had the worst season in 16 years last year in terms of viewership. So what's happening is people are saying, you know what, time out. In the choice between whether you're going to inflict your politics on me, or I'm going to, just give away my political freedoms and just go ahead and watch all your stuff. They're going to pick freedom. They're not going to allow themselves to be force-fed this political stuff. They're just going to turn the television off. And to some degree, you watch the run-up, the Olympics, Rebecca, and how, it all became very, very political all of a sudden. And their opening was the worst opening for viewership in 33 years. Advertisers are extremely anxious right now. So I think we're getting to an inflection point where Americans are sending a signal that says, you don't have to start a brand new league, Love America League, but at the very least, stop getting in my face with all of this progressive nonsense, because I'm just going to turn you off.
Yeah. Bobby, I want to shift gears here a little bit. I want to talk about something that has been all over the news, and that is the COVID-19 and this Delta variant and so forth. But before I jump into my question, you worked as a former Assistant Secretary of State under Colin Powell in 2 White Houses, Bush 41 and the Reagan White House. And you've got over 30 years of experience in criminal justice and national security. So I think that you're the right person for me to ask this question. And I've got to ask it. I'm curious what could be coming as it relates to, COVID-19, shutdowns, masks, and so forth. You have been ahead of the curve on some of this, and you recently wrote a piece voicing concerns about the 2022 elections and the possibility of a Pelosi variant, by which you mean a new push to create fears that might another 2020 style election occur, which is really going to open us up to a lot of fraud. Bobby, you were former Assistant Secretary of State under Colin Powell. You've worked in 2 White Houses. You've got over 30 years of experience in criminal justice and national security. So I want to ask you a question as it relates to what could be coming next with the COVID debate, the shutdowns, the masks, etc. You have been ahead of the curve on some of this, Bobby, and you recently wrote a piece voicing concern about the 2022 elections and the possibility of a Pelosi variant. And I think what you really mean there is a new push to create fears that might another 2020 style election occur and open us up to fraud. So, I want to ask what you think. Now, you're also very comforting in that you do believe that the vaccines and that general immunity are rising, and you're not greatly concerned about the Delta variants. But I'd like for you to really expand on that and tell us what you think we should be concerned about and not concerned about.
Yeah. So thank you. And of course, my reference to a Pelosi variant is a little bit of sarcasm there. She's not she's not a letter of the Greek alphabet, at least not yet. But the bottom line is, I'm always, working for Colin Powell. One of the things he always guided us to do was he called it looking around corners. Look around corners. Look to try to anticipate where current events may lead to a cone of other events that lead to other events. And I think my concern at this moment is that, the media and unfortunately, a lot of the Democratic leadership have been very content to push America's panic button and try to get America, in the last year and a half, to get us to be riled up every day. I have lots of friends, and we certainly know lots of members of Amac that come to Amac for their news, but are not willing to indulge a lot of the hysteria that occurs in the rest of the news world. So what I look at here is I say, so let's go to facts as a starting point. The first original COVID variant, if you will, was called the Alpha. They've now kind of retroactively called it the Alpha variant. So the Alpha variant, if you get 2 shots, according to all the data that I have seen, and including the very most recent data, it says that there's a 93.7% effectiveness rate. Okay, so now let's go to this Delta variant, which has gotten lots of publicity, lots of panic associated with it. We're all now supposed to jump up and down, put on masks, or hide inside our homes. And my pitch here is for reason and wisdom, not panic and fear. So the Delta variant, actually, that original set of shots is 88% effective against the Delta variant. Okay, then they raised this Lambda variant. This is the next one. It's going to be terrible. Well, actually, this is a variant that came out of Peru, and it has only affected less than 1% of the American population. So I don't think there's room for panic there either. So in the grand scheme of things, what I look at it, I say, why are we beating this drum so hard again? I understand that there are people in states, Alabama, Florida, who did not get the vaccine originally, that are getting a mutation of the vaccine. Generally, mutations of original viruses are weaker generally than the original virus. It's just you can consult medical literature there. I'm not a doctor, but that's what they say. So end of the day, why are we panicking? Why are we getting stirred up? And I guess my suspicion is, looking around corners, that what did we see in 2020? We saw things like ballot harvesting. We saw open-ended mailing of mail-in ballots. We saw a push to change all the deadlines, change the counting process, push back observers, all these things, out of precinct voting, don't clean the rolls, all these things that gave us heartache, honestly, even if you believe that the outcome was legitimate. And there are Democrats and others that are very adamant about that. You cannot argue with the fact that these irregularities create doubt in the public mind. So what have the Democrats done that did not actually help us get rid of that doubt, but only increased our doubt? They pushed this HR 1 bill that essentially would have federalized all of those practices that gave people doubt about the 2020 election. So now that was defeated, even though we have to watch because they're sneaking around corners, trying to bring it back through S4 and some other things. But what would be the simplest way to repeat 2020? Well, the simplest way to repeat it would be to impose equal panic about some variant. And all of a sudden in 2022, we got to have mail-in ballots everywhere again. We got to do all those things that gave us heartache. So my concern is not that it will happen. I am not a soothsayer or a predictor of the future.
Right.
I am just someone who says, let's be cautious and think about whether panic is the right answer. And 99 times in 100, panic is not the right answer.
Yeah. I do want to just make a shout out here right now to thank people, especially those members that had a tremendous impact, in my opinion, on stopping HR 1S1 from passing in the Senate. Bobby, as you know, we had over 200,000 emails that were sent, and we had campaigns that were specific to Manchin and Sinema. And, I do believe that AMAC members are making a real difference to ensure that our elections are free and fair. And it's a legitimate question. And I think that it's good for people to understand that, you've got to see the whole big picture. I'm encouraging for people to get vaccinated, but of course, talk to your doctor. Because it really is a conversation that each individual should have with their doctor, and the government should not be dictating to the American people what's good for their health or bad for their health. I do pray that this virus goes away. We'll have to see what happens. I was shocked, Bobby, this morning to hear a woman from a union say, we're going to try to open up our schools in September. We're going to do the best we can. But she used the word try. And in my opinion, Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, haven't they been given the funds needed to open up the schools safely? And shouldn't children be back in schools in September?
Rebecca, you are so right on so many levels here. Not only do they have the funding to open the schools, but actually most teachers, I think it's safe to say, certainly many of the parts of the education community that I talk to want to get back into schools. They think it's better for the kids. You look at the data on the social damage, and I'm not talking about something soft. I'm talking about hard social damage that's being done by being out of schools. You have an increase in drug abuse. You have increased attention deficit problems. You have increased learning deficits as a direct result of not being able to do anything but the Zoom business. Don't get me wrong. I love the Zoom business, but the reality is, we absolutely need to be back in schools. And it's very sad because, again, this is what I'll call a collateral effect of panic. If you create uncertainty, and Mr. Fauci has gone out of his way to create uncertainty, perhaps to defend his own past behaviors. But in any event, if you create uncertainty, uncertainty is a source of anxiety. Uncertainty is a source of, if it's extreme uncertainty, it's a source of panic. And so what I'm really arguing for is that people need to be wise. Look, I made a choice for myself. I got these shots. Other people, I'm 60, so maybe that makes good sense. And I've, been in the military. I've probably gotten 3 or 4 anthrax shots. So the bottom line is, I'm stuffed full of shots. But the reality is you have to make a choice that is good for you, and your doctor, as you say, should guide you. But the notion of panic is a bad basis for any purpose of making a decision. And I think when the Democrats push panic, you have to ask the question, why are they doing that?
Yeah. And maybe there's a silver lining here. We've been talking a lot about critical race theory and the kinds of things that are being put in front of our children. And for people that are not real familiar with what critical race theory is, I want them to go to our website. We've got great information there. We've got a whole guidebook. And it really explains what it is, how it works, and why you should be concerned. Even if you're not currently, actively raising children in the K through 12 school system, but you're a grandparent, an aunt, or an uncle, I'm going to highly recommend that you go ahead and still read this information, because this is what could impact our future generations. And so the silver lining, Bobby, that I think is perhaps it gives us more time to engage with our school boards and to put pressure on the unions that are sort of backing this whole Marxist theory, critical race theory, dangerous to our children. Any comments on critical race theory? I mean,
I think you're absolutely right. Again, Rebecca, the most recent magazine is focused on all the bases for understanding what critical race theory is and why it's so wrong-headed. It is Marxist, and the idea is essentially to flip the conversation. There's another article in that magazine that I think is powerful, and that is an argument that America is the least racist country on the face of the planet. And again, it's all data based. It's not opinion. It's really based on 8 or 10 pools of data that show you that America is actually the land of opportunity. It's the reason so many people want to come here. It's the reason that the vast majority of the minorities that look to come to the Western world come to America and are invited here by their own families, by the way, and sponsored by other Americans. So I won't get into the data there, but the gist is you're absolutely right. We need to beat back this critical race theory business because it's intended to disrupt the American educational system. It's intended to undermine the unity that, again, I'll come back briefly to the sports business. NFL has decided now that they want to have a black national anthem and the American national anthem. Well, this is not the way any American who believes in the American dream, equality between human beings, should be thinking. We should be thinking in terms of one nation under God. We should be thinking in terms of we are all black, white, whatever your skin color, it's irrelevant. What's relevant is that you get every opportunity to use the gifts that God has given you to the greatest advantage of you and your family for indefinite time. So if we're falling short of that, which undoubtedly we are in various areas, then the mission is not to abandon the American dream, but to make the American dream real, which incidentally is what Martin Luther King and Abraham Lincoln promised us we would be trying to do. And that's what we should be trying to do.
Yeah, it is really a great reminder, all of that, what you just said. There's one human race, right? There's one race, rather. It's the human race. To buy into this whole belief that people are judged by or can only succeed based on the color of their skin and that we're born racist is ludicrous. Right. It's ridiculous. Right. And they won't maybe come out and say it with those kinds of words, but we're seeing it in our curriculums. We're seeing it in the books that they're really organizing an entire semester around with first and second graders that are reading books that are really dangerous. So all of that information is on our site. Please go to our site. People listening, get involved. We are going to be organizing a call to action. We'll be getting people giving you a toolbox and a step-by-step, here's what to do in your local community. And AMAC will continue to put up as much information as we can as it develops. Bobby, we all care so much about the love of this wonderful country. Our members do. Our over 2 million members certainly love this wonderful country. They're some of the most patriotic people in America. Somehow with people dismissing the flag, not only bothering to understand history and taking much of our freedom for granted. I mean, my goodness, Bobby, I saw this morning another interview, a couple of young girls and a young guy, college kids, that were saying, I'm not proud to be an American. And I'm thinking, my goodness, what's happening to our nation? It seems that we need to remind ourselves that this country was built on patriotism by all races, creeds, ethnic and national backgrounds, and that people come here still with a deep sense of the possible, believing in the American dream, and that the dream is real. I think that this is why people want to come into America so badly. It's why they're coming here. So to say that the American dream is not real, and to try to get people to believe that America is systemically racist is the wrong way to go. So, Bobby, I just want to share with you, one thing that I love that you and I do is we talk about stories, and we talk about the past. And we know that Black Americans have fought to preserve what they saw as imperfect, but a promise, the possible, the route to real freedom and equality. So, Bobby, I just want to turn it over to you. share with us some of the stories of the past. Share with us some stories that people need to be reminded of so that they can take that message and share it with their friends, their families, and their neighbors.
I think that's a wonderful topic and a wonderful opening. And I think most viewers, as well as we, could talk about patriotism and its value and its significance for hours on end. Anyone who is a true student of history, anyone who is grateful, who wakes up in the morning grateful, goes to sleep at night grateful, has to understand that the gratitude that you have in your heart for the things that you enjoy, or you should have in your heart, is really owed to those who put everything on the line for us. Okay, so those are the military, but it's also those who took risks in business. It's also those who took risks in raising a large family or raising any family. It's those who understand that this is a unique place. Now, I am uniquely situated because I have spent time in 50 countries, and there is not a country on the planet that comes really close to the openness to minorities, the openness to achievement, the idea and the ideal that you can do anything if you are willing to work hard. If you want to be healthy and you go to the gym, if you're the hardest worker in the gym, you will become strong and healthy. If you are a business person who goes out there and gets up early and goes to sleep late, thinking hard and working with others and being collegial, there is no end to the upside. And the same thing is true in the military. The point that you make is really somewhat powerful, actually, because I think people don't realize that every American historically has understood that we fall short of our ideals. We fall short of our ideals in our personal life. We say there are a lot of things we should do, and then we don't do them. Okay. And so we fall short in our collective national life. We say we want to be equal and we want to have everything perfect. Well, perfection eludes humanity. And so we can only do the very best that we commit ourselves to do. So Americans who, and I have a lot of relatives at Arlington National Cemetery. They all went to battle stations with the idea that they were defending the promise of the American dream. So were a lot of Black Americans. People just pause for a minute and think, the United States has had 90 Congressional Medal of Honor winners who were Black. 26 of them were won in the American Civil War. They have distinguished themselves, as we all have, as every slice of America has, men and women and Hispanic and American Indian or Native American and Black American. They have gone to battle stations for this country's freedoms, knowing that we were imperfect, but believing in the promise. So by way of example, people saw or have seen the Band of Brothers series with the 101st Airborne Easy Company. And so they know about the defense of Bastogne, which was how we really held the line against the Nazis at the very end of the war. What they may not know is side by side with that 101st Airborne 506 Paratroop Regiment and Easy Company, side by side was the I'm trying to think of the number, but it was the 333rd artillery, anti-aircraft artillery division, which was all Black. Okay, so we held our own against that Battle of the Bulge, in part because we were all Americans. We didn't think, well, I'm Black and I'm white. Well, they were integrated in 1948, shortly after the war. And, in the Korean War, there are all kinds of Black American heroes, one of whom, incidentally, has a ship named after him. It's hard to fully conceive of how past Americans, despite all of the problems we had, thought about what their commitment was to the future. Another great example, and just people can Google it, is the Tuskegee Airmen. There were 900 plus, I think 990 something Tuskegee Airmen. Of that group, about a third deployed into combat. They flew more than 1,500 missions. Without the Tuskegee Airmen, who were all Black, prior to integration, there wouldn't have been success in Italy and in other places. So why do I mention all these? Because these are all people who believed in the American dream enough that they were putting their lives on the line to defend it. And, we, even though we disagree with a lot of the politics of the left and we disagree with a lot of the socialist way of looking at the world, we have had a black president in this country. And, the reality here is that we are an egalitarian, promise-focused, work will be rewarded focused, value focused society. And we are, I say this sometimes and people say, what is he talking about? We are the other. Okay. The other is the person who is only identified as American based on their ideals. We are that party. We're not all majority, overwhelmingly majority French DNA or German DNA or Japanese DNA or Kenyan DNA. We are not DNA. We are ideals and idealists. And that's what makes us so beautiful as a country. And so you have to put your arms around that. You have to embrace that. You have to say, look, I'm not going to be ashamed of that. I'm going to be really, really proud of that.
That's right.
And it doesn't, it doesn't really matter from what racial or ethnic background.
Yeah, it seems that the left wants to pick at old wounds in that, try to bring people back to a place. We've come so far as a nation. And Martin Luther King, they want to, it seems to me, based on their embracing of this critical race theory, that they're trying to eliminate his message. And that is that he dreamed of that day when his children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And we know that patriotism is not about race, creed, or family background. It is truly about believing in and working for these ideals that you've just laid out. Really wonderful stuff, and always good for us to remember. And Bobby, I've got such hope for America. I really do, because when you look at the history of our nation, I think we're some of the toughest people with the strongest spirit. And, we've got to remember, too, to pray. We're a nation that was based on Christian Judeo values, and I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to say that I pray every single day. I think there's a lot of strength and power in prayer. And ironically, too, Bobby, just one more note I want to make on critical race theory. I was thinking about this last night, is that if you really do embrace critical race theory, you've got to forget the fact and ignore the fact that we are all children of God and that there's one race, the human race. So just think about that. And I ask people that question when they're talking about critical race theory and dividing people up into groups. Racism may exist in this country, and certainly there are racist people. But to say that the flag is a racist flag is just wrong, and I think you've just outlined it right there. Thank you for doing that. I love the idea of, so Bobby, you've been around so many great people, really. You've known a lot of great veterans. And so I thought that maybe a short story, a personal short story about a veteran that you know. So many of our AMAC members are veterans. Or I believe the number is like close to 70% of AMAC members, if they're not a veteran themselves, a family member is or has served. So thank you to everyone engaging and listening, and to all of our veterans out there. We thank you. A short story. We'd love to hear one.
Sure.
Thank you.
I think we are, and I am particularly blessed to have spent time around older veterans, many of whom were teachers of mine in the public school system when that was welcomed. And I think you always have to be grateful. Just, when you wake up, for people who, most of whom incidentally don't tell their stories unless you ask them. But yeah, a couple of stories come to mind. I think I have mentioned once before a history teacher that I had who was a Vietnam veteran, and actually an unusual Vietnam veteran in that he was not drafted. He volunteered, and he volunteered. He became my history teacher, but he volunteered young because he felt that he had wanted to be a history teacher all his life. And so he felt, well, this is a moment when my country needs me. And in the same way that past patriots have stepped up when needed in other conflicts. So he went over there. His experiences were extraordinary in their own right. The last day of his, there's so many situations. I mean, again, for which I think he remains eternally grateful. There was one time when he didn't want to leave. He was medically needed to be heloed out, and he really didn't want to leave his unit. But he was ordered to leave his unit, and he got back, and the radio was going, and a mortar had gone off in the tube. He was a mortar man, killed everybody that was around him. He said, that would have been me. I just was forced to medevac out. He was immediately back in again as soon as he could get back in again. The last day of his time there, A grenade came over the top of a hill. He had actually gone back in, even though he was told he could leave. He went back in again because his unit was down by 50%. Again, that bond that calls people back to serve, to help, to do whatever they can do for America and for their buddies and for their, in a sense, the thing that makes their heart work, right? They get out there because they want to help their friend. So his unit was down. He went back. The last day of that, the last day of his orders, actually, a grenade came over the top with the pin out between him and a guy that was about 4 feet away from him. And he said, you lock eyes in a situation like that and you never forget that moment. But he picked it up, threw it, and it went off behind them, and they both came home. But the story I wanted to tell you today, I think, as I think about it now, is that when he came home, you may remember that he started a newsletter for the 101st Airborne, which he was a part of, and he was very proud of that newsletter. In some ways, it was a time now that there was no internet. There was no way to connect thousands and thousands of veterans. And you may remember the story I told at one point about him that a guy called him and was looking for another veteran named Jack. And it turned out that he put these two guys together and one had saved the other's life many, many years earlier, 40 years earlier. But another story that I'll never forget that he told, which is just, again, sort of shows you the depth of commitment that people make in life. A family called him. Well, the way it would work, if someone was killed in combat, their rifle, if it was still functional, and the knife that they would wear on their ankle, I think the 101st 82nd Airborne wear their knives on their ankles. They, when they jump, those were reissued, right? So when they were originally issued, in many situations, they had a name on them. So the knife would be issued with a name, and so. If that person was killed in battle, that knife might be reissued later to another veteran, to another person in battle. So he got a call one day from a family that said that their son had passed away of natural causes, but they had noticed in going through his military savings of the things that he had from his career that there was a knife, and that the name on the knife was not the name of their son. So it was a reissue from Vietnam. And so they asked Dave, my history teacher, do you think there's a chance that it would be meaningful to the family of the original veteran who died and it was reissued? So Dave hunted for that family and found them. And the siblings and the mother and father of the veteran who had died in Vietnam got that knife, and it meant everything to them. So it's a double story, right? It meant everything to that family, but another family felt strongly enough about how important it might be that they went, even in their own pain, they went and made sure another family had it. So this is the kind of bond that Americans have with Americans. This is the kind of bond that veterans have with veterans. And it's why we not only, many of us do love the country, but we should love the country, and we should give thanks, both in prayer and in general, to the fact that we live with such a beautiful country around us. This is the most wonderful country in the world, bar none. And we just don't understand how beautiful it is. And if you want to go back to the origins, go look again, just refresh for a moment, by reading books like Miracle at Philadelphia, where you see how did we get to be who we are. Or there's a little movie that was done a couple of years ago. It's sort of a historical replay called A More Perfect Union. And you'll understand in the matter of an hour why it's such a miracle that we exist, and why that miracle has been passed upon to us with the expectation that we will consciously understand it and pass it forward with love to the next generation.
Oh, Bobby, thank you. Just beautiful. Love these personal stories. I'm so glad that you remember them and that you were paying good attention to that history teacher, which is wonderful. And that's what we need to do, is pay attention. Folks, get involved. And I just want to remind everybody out there listening, if you have not renewed your AMAC membership, please do so, because we are doing so much. We are the place to go. Bobby, over 500,000 emails have been sent to various members of Congress, to secretaries of state, etc., over the first 6 months of this year alone. That was done by AMAC members. We're getting your voice heard. People are listening. So if you have not joined or renewed your AMAC membership, please do so. Just go to amac.us. And if you are a member, please tell your friends and family to join the AMAC family, because we do so much for you. For $16 a year, you're automatically subscribed to the AMAC magazine, which is a bi-monthly magazine. Folks, you're going to get news and information in that magazine that you won't see anywhere else. And finally, if you have not yet downloaded the AMAC News app, go ahead and do that right on your smartphone. Folks, don't forget to like, follow, and share this podcast wherever you stream. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Bobby, thank you for being with us today. You just lifted up my morning and give us a lot of hope. Thank you. Look forward to having you back with us again next week. And to all of you listening out there, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your AMAC podcast, Better for America, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.